Welcome to Reading Wisdom by the author James Lynch and his ever dutiful note taker, Poeartistry. Hello, perceptive readers, and of course, hello, Poeartistry. I want to take this opportunity today to share in this reading wisdom something that may actually touch your intellect and your insight into a matter about history. Okay, about history. And one of the reasons why I want to share this with you, because I have several reasons I want to share this with you, is one, to mention the school teachers, okay, the value of the school teachers. Uh, Oftentimes, when people get older and they learn many new things and it opens their mind to so many new skills and talents, okay, they will reflect back at times, not only something that their parents said or taught them, but even what their teachers taught them, even in the classes that they did not always what is it bloom in or excel in as well as maybe they wanted to. It was just maybe different topics or subjects that made their grades just go up and down, up and down. In particular, I want to talk about the history teachers that, at least back in the day, you always had a sociology or social sciences, or really just, we said, history teachers in every grade. In every grade. And they had a tendency to not just teach in the book, because those books were always so beautifully well made. And I admit, I hear about persons saying that they don't always teach the history that would totally benefit us, depend on what land you in or not. And I know that is most likely the case. Is depending on what you need, what you're looking for to know about, or what have you. All the same, I'm going to share something about mainstream history still, because it reminded me of a point that was made some years ago. And actually, the feeling that came over me as the teacher told, their history story in the way that they did. It's very interesting. So I want to share that mood, if you will. And then I'm going to read something with you to give you one bit of extra information that I did not know all those years ago, because the teacher didn't really go into that aspect of it. It just wasn't really, probably in this case, the way the teacher was looking at it, applicable at that time, because they were actually trying to get our mind to comprehend something. See, I want to say comprehend something because it is an expression that actually a president of the country has said recently, that it's like, yeah. And when I heard about this, I said, yeah, he certainly knew why it was done in this way or that way, you see. So I want to let you know that the teacher had related it in such a different way that it would cause you, even at a young age, to certainly understand why they did what they did. And then all the way down to this, 100 years later, no, not 100 years later, you have the same person, I mean, a different person with authority and power that still use that same reasoning. It was no, what is it? No, twisting it, no playing around with this or that, but just said straight up, this is the exact reason why I'm going to do this once again. Okay, what is that? Okay, well, let me keep following along with me. One more point I want to make before I tell you the whole thing. See, today, you'll hear a lot, especially if you ask the artificial intelligence questions and things of that nature at times, depending on what model you use. As you know, with artistry, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing this, I have artistry expressing herself in different ways, rather always going along with just saying according to the context. And this is one of the reasons why. The information I'm about to share with you, it's actually more than just the context. See, in my mind, I always talk about you got to understand or be aware of the scenario, the circumstances, the situation as to why something became the way that it did. See, sometimes people say this person is flip flopping, and really they're not. It's the circumstances that has changed that require, once again, some type of adjustment, or it just would have been, you know, more of making, what is it, a mole into a mountain. You see a molehill into a mountain. Okay. So what is this? Well, in December, just a few months ago, um, there was a change of a name in the United States of America from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Now, for many persons who were just even born within the past 20 years or so, uh, it may not really even register. They probably only heard that, it's the Department of War now, and not really reference back to it was the Department of Defense some years ago, and it was actually changed decades ago, like in the 19 early, 20s or 30s, or in that area where it was still considered like the Department of War. And then what happened after all the, carnage and bombs being dropped, atomic bombs being created, and things of that nature, in 1947, they changed it. You see, the wars were over. They changed it from the Department of War, if that's what they called it, officially, to the Department of Defense. And what was the reason for it? See, the teacher was emphasizing that taught this was mentioned. They didn't say the name was, it was political. They were still just describing the atmosphere of here it is. You had still a honorable, a nation that took, and I'm saying this in a good way still, a nation that took great pride and honor, in their leaders, their emperors, and things of that nature. And they had they really been throwing some serious blows, left and right. Carnage, mayhem, and things of that nature. And so now the United States really wanted to still continue to switch over to a rebuilding, uh, restoration, you see, of these lands. And that's why they made, even with Japan, a lot of concessions, even to the point of allowing them to really just keep their emperor, even though it was still more in a ceremonial way or what have you. It was still basically saying, "Hey, we're not gonna do." I mean, this is, I'm quoting like the way that the people talk back then. It's like, no, we're not going to do any more harm. It's over. The treaty been signed, this and that. And what we want to do is continue to promote and show what we're trying to do throughout the world. And so to have a name or a department that makes it seem like they were just, warriors looking to start a fight everywhere, that is not the spirit that the United States of that time wanted to give, anymore. And so it was changed. Now, the thing about it is, see, what I'm going to read to you is this. One, the United States of America, presently, Donald J. Trump, actually, like I said, changed it back to now the Department of War. And he did. He straight up said, it was because he was basically saying it was just political. It's not really given the right. I think he was saying the right type of connotation or spirit of what we want people to realize that you mess with this or you mess with that, he ain't gonna mess around. I'm not even trying to put words in his mouth. But the key thing that I was saying is he was just basically talking about it was political reasons in the in the sense, or it was, why the name changed the first time, and he felt like it needed to have that in the sense that back to it. In other words, don't mess with me, don't mess with me, don't mess with us, or what have you. You see the way that Donald Trump, the president Donald Trump, talks at times. And so what I wanted to still emphasize is that the spirit that at least I gathered from the way the history teachers talked about it back then, even if somebody could have said that it was political, you could still see that, that's why the people wanted to do this or change the name in that way. And then you can look at the situations today, which I'm not giving any opinion to it. I'm just telling you, you could see the reasoning of why some leaders end up saying they wanted to change it back from the Department of Defense, you see, to the Department of War. Now, in this reading wisdom, I'm still going to share with you something that I didn't know from everything that I just shared with you that I think you would want to know all the same. So, where did I get this information from? The question is from history.com, and it was from why the United States Department of War has changed names through history. I got a cough drop in my mouth so that I can keep my palate moisturized. I'm going to read it to you now, okay? All right. For 158 years, the United States had a Department of War, but that agency was much different from the modern Department of War, which was created after World War II to merge all four branches of the military under one executive department. When was the Department of War created? On August 7, 1789. During the very first session of Congress, President George Washington signed legislation creating the Department of War, also known as the War Office, a term borrowed from the British. The Department of War was primarily in charge of the Army. The Navy got its own cabinet level department in 1798, which also oversaw the Marines. The first Secretary of War was Henry Knox, a close aide to Washington during the Revolutionary War, who was already serving as Secretary at War under the Articles of Confederation. The new Department of War replaced the Board of War and Ordnance, which Washington established in 1776 to administer the military during the Revolution. What's the significance of the National Security Act of 1947? World War II required unprecedented levels of coordination across the different branches of the United States military to fight on land, sea, and air. After the war, as the Soviet Union emerged as a threat, President Harry Truman signed the National Security Act of 1947, a major restructuring of United States military administration. First, the act replaced the Department of War with the Department of the Army. Next, it created the United States Air Force as its own branch, separate from the Army. Then all four branches of the military were merged under a single organization called the National Military Establishment. Under the 1947 law, the head of the National Military Establishment, NME, was the Secretary of Defense, a new cabinet level position. The Defense Secretary had to be a civilian or retired from the military for 10 years, later lowered to 7 years. The first Secretary of Defense was James Forster, former Secretary of the Navy. The National Security Act of 1947 also created other fixtures of United States national security, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Council. When did it become the Department of Defense? The National Military Establishment didn't last long. Just 2 years later, Truman signed a series of amendments to the National Security Act that replaced it with the Department of Defense. The problem with the National Military Establishment was that the Secretary of Defense, who was technically in charge, didn't have authority to resolve disputes between the branches of the military. That's because the secretaries of the Army, Navy, and Air Force still had seats in the president's cabinet. The 1949 amendments to the National Security Act created the Department of Defense as a new executive department. On top of that, the secretaries of the Army, Navy, and Air Force were removed from the cabinet, and the Secretary of Defense was given total direction, authority, and control over the new department, according to Truman. The changes to the National Security Act included the creation of a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staffs, who would advise both the President and the Secretary of Defense directly on military matters. The first chairman was General Omar Bradley, appointed in 1949. In 2025, President Donald Trump issued an executive order restoring the use of Department of War as a secondary title for the Department of Defense. Only Congress can approve a permanent name change. Did you catch that, perceptive reader? In 2025, President Donald Trump issued an executive order restoring the use of Department of War as a secondary title for the Department of Defense. Only Congress can approve a permanent name change. So, thank you for being interested in this reading wisdom, and have a very, very wonderful day.